Welcome back, Nerglings. Today we are taking a look at the orcs I will be using in my Chaos Dwarf Army. But before we start, be sure to like, share, subscribe and ring the tallyman's bell so you don't miss an update. Okay, on to the orcs. I'll be using predominantly named orcs and their associated warbands in the army. The original mercenary orc regiments have great character and come armed with a variety of weapons, which will give me a range of tactical options when using them. For instance, an orc regiment such as Ruglad's armoured orcs, who are armed with spears, shields and heavy armour, will be a great unit to hold an objective or resist a charge, whilst Harboff's orc archers, who are armed with bows and light armour, will be better placed to pepper the enemy with arrows as they advance. In addition, I plan on using Usgod's black orcs, although I've yet to find a suitable proxy for the single monopose black orc that makes up the unit. I may use Merliton orcs armed with two-handed weapons in this respect. I would also like to have a couple more units with Grimgor and Gorfang as their leaders. Hell, whilst I'm at it, I may plug for Morglom Necksnapper too, as he was a fab old-school miniature. So there is a way to go to finish the collection. With that in mind, I've gone for relatively small units of 12, including a command team, and then placed the leaders on Hexy base, separate to their units, so as to single them out as special characters of note. Whilst maybe not tactically advisable to wander around the battlefield solo, as long as they stay within earshot of their troops, they should be fine. I've always really admired collectors' orc and goblin armies. They are invariably massive and full of interesting miniatures. The more different manufacturers' models, the better. I will be using Citadel, Grenadier, Heartbreaker, Merliton, and just about any other models I can source in my army, so look forward to more arriving on my Facebook fan page shortly. Note, I've misaligned the Goblin Slaves and Orc Mercenaries videos rather than simply lumping them all together, as I view the Orcs as working in a more symbiotic relationship with the Chaos Dwarfs than potentially the fluff would allow otherwise. Of course, I'm not particularly bothered with that, and I am looking forward to fielding an army which will look the best it can, rather than necessarily worrying all that much about whether Grimgor or Gorfang would work with the Chaos Dwarfs, etc. Anyways, in the meantime, the marvellous fellows at the Fluff and Hammer podcast have provided a fab short tale about a legendary orc called Gromber. Enjoy.
Today, I will tell you the story of my ancestor, the glorious Gromber. Born somewhere in the eastern mountains of the edge of the world, Gromber was an orc, like the others. He lived by pillaging tribal villages, like the rest of the Red Boar tribe, but one peculiarity distinguished him from the others. He was revengeful. Among the Red Boars, it was customary for all orcs to face the chief regularly, so that the tribe was always led by the strongest. As Gromber was always too busy wanting to take revenge for the slightest slighting that was done to him, he was always brooding on a cruel revenge. He often fought. He forgot to test his strength against his leader. Some made fun of him and interpreted it as cowardice, wearing it with the nickname Gromber the Coward. Of course, he did not like that at all, and kept the vicious circle going. He wanted to take revenge on those who made fun of him. He always forgot to confront the chief. His life changed when his camp was attacked at night by the Eye of Jade, an elite regiment of Chaos Dwarfs specializing in capturing slaves. As soon as he woke up, he was thrown into a cage and sent off to the Dark Lands with the rest of his tribe. It was then that the long suffering of Gromber began. Half the Red Boars perished on the journey, thirsty and hungry, but also very tired. The draft animals dead on the road. Some greenskins whipped to tow the heavy teams. Once arrived at the fortress for which the orcs were intended, the red boars became guinea pigs. They were dismayed to discover the Chaos Dwarf mages specifically asked the Eye of Jade to impose all of these hellish conditions on the captives during the journey, so that only the strongest would stay alive. Gromber was passed from cage to a cell, where he underwent spells and alchemical treatments every day. He was not treated better than on the trip, but he felt he was getting bigger, getting more resistant, and his skin was getting darker and darker. He became one of the first Black Orcs. But as his strength grew, so did his spirit of revenge. By dint of undergoing experiments, all the red boars eventually died, except Gromber, kept alive by only his desire for revenge. Rewarded for his achievement, he was able to leave his prison to serve as a slave on a hellish construction site where any greenskin would quickly succumb to unbreathable air and heavy loads. The food was awful, and he had to eat a soup of stale water and grey cabbage every day, the only plant that grew in the soiled expanses of the Darklands. For Gromber, this taste will ever remain that of bitterness. One day, the Eye of Jade brought new orcs to traffic to the Magi, and Gromber was called back from the yards. His new goal was to watch the jails of his fellows from various other tribes. Whatever tribe it was a great mistake to entrust the supervision of a desperate tribe to a Black Orc. On that first night, he neutralized the dwarf guards, stole their keys, and released all the prisoners. Sallybeck, leader of the Black Wolves, immediately recognized Gromber's superiority and did not even argue when he assumed command. He even gave his providential savior the title of Gromber the Crusher. Of Gromber, the Rebellion Orc. Of Gromber, the Slave Lord. Of Gromber, the Dwarf Crusher. Taken by surprise, the Chaos Dwarfs were overwhelmed by the power of their own creation, going from prison to prison, freeing more and more orcs and goblins. The rebels sowed devastation without name. Jade's Eye had to intervene to counter the revolt, and Gluttenkark, champion of the regiment, intervened in person in front of Gromber. The fight was intense, with on one side a furious green one, eager to disembowel a torturer, and on the other, a dwarf convinced of his own superiority. Spectators said that Cord himself, drawn to hatred of Gromber, and seeing there the possibility of gaining power over the deity of the Chaos Dwarfs, intervened on the battlefield. The Black Orc was taken in a spasm of divine power and overthrew the champion, throwing him into a ravine which ended the battle. This was not the end of the problems, though, the Chaos Dwarfs not having their last word, but that's another story, which I may tell you someday.
To that end, I would like to end this video there and open up the comments to you. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and ring the Tallyman's bell so you can keep up with this huge project. Peace.